Alright, so we've got to replace the brackets that the pods come with the surface mount brackets versus the tube mounts. So we've got to swap that over. It's not too difficult. Probably the hardest part is getting the wire. Probably the hardest part of the whole thing is going to be getting the wires pulled through the new bracket. So first thing we're going to do is we have to remove the old bracket. So we're going to go ahead and pull these lower set screws out. So you got a set screw on the lower part of the bracket on each side. Pull those out. Then you have you got a small set screw on one side and then a bigger set screw, which is actually more like a bolt on the other side that you loosen up. And you have to loosen both of them enough to get them out of there, but you don't want to lose them. Then you have to turn the bracket, so the bracket, so even with the set screw in or out, I'm sorry, even with the set screw out, the bracket doesn't come out. You have to turn it and find the notch. So there's some notches here that it fits in. Then you have to fish the wire through. It's not too bad on this bracket to get the wire out because there's a pretty big hole. The issue is getting the bracket or getting the wire through this bracket because you have this tiny hole here that you have to feed it through. And then this hole itself is smaller. So, and then you have an opening here that's even smaller to try to turn at a 90 through. So that's the hardest part of getting these brackets added onto these speakers, is trying to get this wire fished through here. So we're gonna try to see if we can get this fished through. Then we gotta try to turn around and fish it through this other opening. And when you have one of these in front of you, you'll see there's only one spot it can really come out and go through. So you're kind of trying to bend it around at a 90 inside of the bracket, which can be a bit fun. Once you got your wire fished through, line up your tabs again. Find where they line up at. And I actually need to turn the bracket. I've got it turned the wrong way. I need it to be turned this way. And it does matter which way you put it. Technically it can go either way. You can either have the wire coming out the front or the back, or you can actually have the wire coming out through the hole itself, but in this application that's not going to work. But if whichever way you go, you're limited on the range of motion up and down. This bracket only goes so far one way, so you just have to be sure that the way that you're gonna set it is the way that you want it to get your range of motion out of it. Okay, we're gonna put our set screws back in just loosely. We will tighten those set screws all the way once we figure out where we want it in the vehicle. It also comes with the speaker. It comes with Loctite. Highly recommended. Make sure you use the Loctite. I even actually use some different brand Loctite, because I found that this Loctite doesn't really seem to hold well in certain applications. I've had these things start to back off and come loose, and I've had to replace or redo the screws again. So I've kind of switched over to just a more readily available Loctite, something like the actual Loctite Permatex brand. Just the Permatex Loctite, the little red and blue tubes. Either way, you need to make sure that you discuss with whoever is going to be the person that has this final, the customer, or if it's you, just they need to know that they need to be checking these set screws every so often, just to make sure they're tight. Like I said, even with their Loctite that it comes with, or adding other Loctite, especially if they're in bolts hanging on tubes like with this bracket, I make sure that, you know, hey, you need to be locking these things, because if they come loose, it's not going to be fun. Now they do come with, if you're going to use it on a tube, if you're going to use it on a tube mount in a boat or something like that, they do have in the kit, they have some cables, basically some, you know, I would call them dummy proof, fail proof cables. If one of these bolts, or really all of these bolts, were to let go, then these cables you could wrap around the bar as a secondary backup measure for making sure that this thing doesn't hit the ground. If you're going to put them on a boat, on a rail, a overhead tube style or something like that, I would recommend using those cables. For us, we're going with surface mount, so there's no need to worry about that. So that's it. So we go ahead and we get that bracket swapped over. The other thing you'll learn is that for whatever reason, every single Allen screw on here is a different size. So the two for the actual speaker, they come with the speaker. The ones for this bracket, the surface mount bracket, is different. It's a I want to say it's either a 3mm or a 4mm. So they're all different. They're all different sizes. So you're gonna have to have a pretty decent set of metric size Allen wrenches in order to have kind of all of the different Allen sizes. I actually think these are the same on this bracket. So this bracket is the same as the bigger one on there. So that's nice. Alright, so that's swapped over. The only thing we have left to do now is mount this other pod in the Jeep. The other two pods are already there, so we'll get after that. I do have plugs coming in. I'm still waiting on them. It's been almost a month. I ordered some Deutsch 6-pin waterproof plugs, so that way I could remake the plugs on here. Previously, I had weather pack plugs on here, on the ones that are in there existing. I had some weather pack plugs on there, and we were only utilizing the green color. He didn't want to have RGB previously. It was just green because everything in the Jeep is green. And I had 4-pin weather pack plugs on the other speakers. So when I decided, hey, or when he decided, hey, we're gonna go with RGB, and I knew I needed 6 wires, instead of ordering big bulky 6-pin weather packs, I just ordered 6-pin Deutsch connectors, which are about an inch and a half wide, you know, or an inch and a half long and maybe an inch wide. They're much smaller, is why we went with those. But of course, like everything else, they're on back order. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the speakers mounted. We're going to get all the wires ran, get the amplifiers all set up, ready to go. And then hopefully within the next couple days, I think the tracking number now says next week's middle of next week sometime. So within the next couple days, hopefully we get those connectors in, and then I can show you, you know, kind of how we pin up those connectors and you know, make all that up. I highly recommend using some type of weather pack or waterproof connector for this versus just trying to butt crimp or even solder this together. If you know you're dealing with 6 wires, so you're gonna end up with a big bulky piece here if you're trying to butt crimp or solder all this together. With those waterproof connectors, you put your connector on, you heat shrink up to your connector, it stays waterproof. It's nice if you ever have to move it or get rid, you know, do something, you can unplug it, and it's kind of easy. I wish DS would give you more wire. You know, that's been the only downfall that I've had with these pods, and it's all of their pods. It's not just this style. If they'd give like another 2 feet, typically it would be easier when you're dealing with these mounts and things like that, especially when you're running this inside of a tube. They'd give you a few more feet of wire. You could really you know, kind of decide where you're going to put that wire a lot easier, but we'll make it work. We'll get it spliced together and make it work out for them. So all right, let's get to mounting this, and then we'll continue on.